My apologies. I think we lost a lot of people just for my lateness. I had a meeting that ran absolutely ridiculously long. So I do apologize for that. So just going to jump into it. My apologies. My apologies. See a couple people joining here. My apologies. It's been a mad dash day. Been on meetings all morning. Just so everybody knows, April 27th, we will be having a public sovereign soiree at a anger room, smash room. We'll be breaking things with bats and mallets. So that'll be fun. That's $20 a person. So that $20 a person will get you membership, but we do need RSVP because we need to know how many people we're bringing in because they can only have so many in there. So if you are going, make sure to RSVP in the portal. There is an event on the events page, just say going. And then if you have any questions, reach out to myself or Tish, and we'll square that away. That is in, is that Oak Grove?
Carmichael.
Carmichael. I can't hear you, but I saw I could read your lips. So Carmichael. So that's here locally. So that'll be fun. So other than that, I don't think I have any other red tape admin stuff to talk about. But yeah, so I'm a little off my game right now just because I'm literally running from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And then after that to a meeting. But today's our family call, I believe. Tish, correct me if I'm wrong. Today's family.
Faith.
I gotta go look. Let's see.
Faith.
The faith? Is it faith? Today's faith. I am wrong. I like how you're able to sign to me and I can either read your lips or know exactly what you're saying without hearing you. That's fun. And the whole reason I haven't been able to hear you is because my sound has been off. You see how I said I'm off my game here? Can't even do technical stuff.
Can you hear me now?
Huh?
Can you hear me now?
Can.
All right.
I'm glad it's faith and not family, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I'm writing my book and I completely redid the structure because I recently purchased a book and I like the structure, so I'm stealing it. But that also
not stealing, borrowing, repurposing.
Feeling like an artist. I'll make it my own, right?
Right.
But it's a much more tactical feel to it in the sense of like easy to adopt and easy to return to and use as a resource rather than me just pontificating through a book, which is something that I was worried about it coming off as from a voice perspective. And so the structure is a lot better. And so talking about faith, the things that I have been writing about generally fall under the faith structure, right? Like gratitude, confidence, and humility, pride, things of that nature. And I've expanded on it quite a bit in my writing. So I think I have 8 more topics to write on, and then it'll be done. And then I'll have the first transcript done, and then I have to go through it again. But talking on faith, one of the things that I was writing on was around courage. And over the years, starting Heroes and talking about courage, and I know we've talked about courage quite often, because it's kind of like my one thing that I talk about a lot, is, life has to be lived with courage. And the minute that you live with fear, that's when the worst repercussions you can think of. And I've talked about this before with the recent Avatar 2 movie, which is basically the Patriot on another planet. 95% of the problems are because the father is scared something is going to happen to his children, but instead of facing them as a man, he runs. And by running, he not only still places his family in danger, he actually places other people outside of his family in danger, those who are sympathetic to his needs, those who are helping him, so on and so forth. And so courage for me sounds a lot like that, right? Like when problems arise, you need to face them. You need to have the courage to face them. And as we look at society today, and we look at what Heroes is trying to build and develop in the community that we want, courage as regards to faith, oftentimes gets misunderstood as how we develop courage. And I've heard this a couple times. And the reality is that most people think courage comes from not being scared. But really, courage comes from being scared of the alternative far more than the action itself. Right? As a father, if I was to fear somebody coming and hurting my children, then me fearing my death would be a far second from the fear of the damage to my children. So me stepping in front of them, being their shield, being the sword that makes sure that they're safe, wouldn't necessarily take courage in the traditional view of how people see it, because I'm actually acting out of fear. I'm actually acting out of a greater fear of their life being injured. So therefore I can present myself as a courageous individual who stepped in front of it because I'm more scared of the alternative. Whereas most people see courage as like, oh, I'm brave, or I don't have fear. The reality is you need to start looking at things as like, what's the worst alternative? Right. And when you're looking at, and it doesn't matter if it's learning a new skill, it doesn't matter if it's, making sure commies don't take over the US. It doesn't matter if it is, starting a family or starting a new job or changing up your life or losing weight or going to gym for the first time. The courage that it takes to do all of those things is going to be found in the alternative. And we've heard this quote a lot. People change when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. And that's the same concept when it comes to courage. When the fear of not moving outweighs the fear of moving, you will move. When the fear of not acting outweighs the fear of acting, you will act. When the fear of speaking up outweighs the fear of staying silent, you will speak up. So the reality is, rewire how you see courage, because it's not a choice of, am I going to be courageous today? Am I going to be brave today? It's a choice of, what's worse? What is the worst outcome? What is it that I'm so afraid of that's compelling me to make these things happen? Right. And I had to identify this a lot, because a lot of people, recently, especially because I recently put a video out on Instagram talking about my greatest shame and how I made a choice out of fear. I didn't go back to the military, and I felt really bad about it. And it's something that's kind of like weighed on me for a long time. And a lot of people came out and, were very supportive. And a lot of people are like, I can't believe you said that publicly. Like, that's crazy. You're super courageous. You're super brave for sharing that. It was very powerful because you're so brave. And the reality is, it didn't take a lot of courage and bravery for me to share that. Like, it really doesn't. And the reality is, because the alternative for me, if I didn't share that, the way that I see it is, if I didn't say that, maybe there's some guy out there that kills himself because I kept my mouth shut. Maybe there's somebody out there who, has been dealing with this for a long time, and they drink themselves to sleep every night because they've been trying to run from it and they think they're alone. Maybe there's somebody out there who has a spouse. I had a couple people reach out who said that their spouse has survivor's guilt, and they sent them my video, and they felt that I understood and they weren't alone. So to me, it didn't take courage for me to speak my mind on that, because to me, I feared, had I not said that, how many of those people that were impacted by it, who positively seen that information and received that information to make a positive change in their trajectory, would have made a negative change in the trajectory all the way down to suicide. And so my whole thing is, when I get to heaven, when I see God and he puts me in front of the version of me that I'm going to become, my fear is, it's going to also be all the people that were injured, hurt, or killed because of the actions that I took. And I have to take that on as guilt as well. And that's how I view afterlife as well. A lot of people, they look at heaven and they look at, this is my personal belief. Okay. Don't mean that you can't have your own belief system. But for me, my personal belief is, when I die and I go for judgment, I'm not going to be met with only the good stuff. Everybody wants to talk about the good stuff. Kingdom of heaven, you'll forget everything. you'll only know light and you'll only know love and all the people you love are there and so on and so forth. But no, I believe that you will also be brought to judgment almost like a scale. These are the things that you did great. Do they outweigh the horrific things that you did? And I think a lot of people don't want to think like that because it's scary, because they know what they did. They have shame and guilt about that. I come to terms with my shame and guilt. But my fear, and the thing that keeps me up from time to time, is if I didn't say something that I know I felt I should have said, or I was compelled to say, and I just kept my mouth shut, who died because of that? Who suffered because of that? Who prolonged their suffering because of that? Who could have got their way out of it had I opened my mouth but didn't? And I fear that the day I die, I'll be surrounded with more people like that than the people I helped. When I meet my maker, I fear that more than anything. And so that gives me courage to speak up and say what I believe and speak truthfully and bring light to the world and talk about things that people generally don't want to talk about. It's not because I'm a sycophantic, egotist who's like, my way is the right way. Like, that has no bearing on anything. I don't care if people agree with me or not, but if I feel compelled to say something and I don't, that weighs heavier on me than anything. And so when we talk about courage, think about that when you're starting a business, getting fit. Find the thing that makes the change necessary so that you can shift, so that you can make the positive trajectory. And then realize, one, it's not going to be an overnight thing. And two, it's not going to be simple. Sorry, it's not going to be easy. It'll be simple. It won't be easy. These are very different things, and a lot of people conflate them. Easy means you're not going to struggle. Easy means that once you make the decision, that's it. Bada bing, bada boom, you're done. Simple is, it's not complex to make a decision, but it will be very hard to make sure that that decision takes place, to make sure that you stick to that decision, to make sure that you have the discipline, the rigor, the wherewithal to move forward from that decision. But making the decision is the simplest thing on the planet. And if you're looking at, I've always wanted to start a business, I've always wanted to start a podcast, I've always wanted to help people, I want to be a coach, I want to get in shape, I want to know how to fight, I want to know how to shoot guns, I want to know how to hunt, I want to know how to harvest food, I want to know how to homestead, but I don't know where to start. These are measurements of ignorance, right? Like, I don't know what I don't know, and therefore I'm not going to start. Instead, measure it against what will happen if I don't learn how to shoot a gun. If I never overcome my fear of shooting a gun, what's the worst that can happen? Well, when I need a gun, I'm not going to know what to do. What happens if I don't understand, how to homestead and grocery stores collapse? Well, then I'm going to feel stupid because I've always said I was going to learn and I never did. What happens if I don't start the business, right? My fear of regret of making a bad decision, or my fear of regret of not making a decision, outweighs my fear of making a bad decision. I never want to sit on my deathbed talking to people about, I wish I did X. I wish I had the balls to start the business. I wish I had the balls to do this or that or the other. My fear of regret outweighs my fear of failure. My fear of not being able to play with my kids, my fear of not being able to defend my kids, my fear of not being able to be functional and utilitarian physically is what keeps me going to the gym. If I go on a hike, I put a 40-pound pack on. Do I need to put a 40-pound pack on? Absolutely not. I could just walk. The likelihood that I'm going to need what's in that pack on a 3.5-mile hike is very, very low. But I put a 40-pound pack on, 60-pound pack on, 80-pound pack on, because I hate the idea that when I need to carry 80 pounds, because I didn't do it on those occasions when it was arbitrary, now that it's necessary, I won't be capable. So my fear of not being capable when it's necessary gets me to do the things that I need to when it's arbitrary. And that's how we should be framing courage. That's how we should be framing our bravery. That's how we should be framing our decisions, is it shouldn't be, I'm making the best decision for me, I'm living my best life, because those are very soft motivators, right? Everybody talks about this in the business world, especially around making money, is like, when it becomes the only thing that you care about, you will make money, right? Fuck balance, throw it out the window, because it needs to be your only focus. It's something I struggle with. Success as a business is generally monetary, and we've talked about it as a team. I don't really care about money. I care about impact. So when I do things, sometimes things get mismatched because I'll start to listen to somebody who only cares about money, start to do things that go towards that goal, and then I feel disingenuine because I care about impact, and then it completely poisons everything we're doing in that moment. We have to back it out and do what we need to do. And so when you're looking at having the courage to take that first step, start looking at, why do you want that step? What do you fear more by taking that step? Do you fear failure, or do you feel staying the same? And that, I think, is a much greater motivator than, for two reasons, than just looking at the positive. One, harnessing fear for what it's for. I think most people look at fear and they're like, you shouldn't be afraid. Nobody should feel fear. Like, biologically and anthropologically, that's wrong. Humans have been developed through fear. Our adrenal systems, our endocrinatic systems, our muscular systems, our thought patterns, our neurological systems, they are all systems that are founded, if you go to the root of them, in fear. All of our survival mechanisms is having the right amount of fear to be utilitarian. The problem is, now that we've disconnected from fear, and now everybody's being taught fear is a problem, fear is the bad guy, fear is a villain, you should never be afraid, and feel entitled to never being afraid. Those systems, such as intuition, such as managing your adrenaline, such as stage fright, knowing that the same systems that make you feel exhilarated are the same systems that make you feel scared. It's just how you frame it. Because we've disconnected from it as a system, we now feel that fear is a problem. So if you look at courage in the form of fear, you're now harnessing fear for the intended function that it serves in your body. It's to get you to not be in that space where you're afraid. If you're afraid of a lion, don't go to a fucking lion. That's harnessing your fear. Now, if you run away from a lion and leave your child and kids there, now your fear is not harnessed. Now you're being controlled by your fear, because your priorities have just been changed by your fear. What we demand as courage is when we override our fear with something else. That's what we define as courage. What I'm saying is, most people think that it's an arbitrary rewiring. What I mean by arbitrary is, I'm just not going to be scared today. And if anybody's ever been in a violent situation, an altercation, you're fucking scared. You get all of the symptomatic systems of being scared. You get shaky, you get adrenaline dump, your eyes get wide and dilated, your body starts to vibrate at a higher level, your heart starts to beat hella heavy, your mouth dries out. That's fear. The difference is, the people that have been in violent altercations enough recognize that as, I'm just about to fuck this dude up. I'm just about to win. Because they've rewired it to know those systems are priming the body to act the way that I need it to act, in the way that I need it to act. People that are not used to that shut down, right? The simple version of this is fight or flight. There's people that fight and there's people that run. And I would add that there's people that just freeze altogether because they've never felt it at all. So going back to the example of, if you're afraid of lions, get the fuck away from the lions. But if you have a child and a wife or a husband that is depending on you, what matters more, your fear of lions or your fear of them dying? For me, and I talk about this with people, and I've had people talk shit to me, my character means more to me than anything. So I don't care if I'm afraid of that lion. You will not get to call me a coward. So my character as a brave and courageous man matters more to me than my fear of that thing over there. That's me personally. If there are people I love, that's an even greater reason for me to deal with that. Because my character is as a protector. That's my character. So I fear not being a protector more, and failing as a protector, and the things that are going to happen to my loved ones, I fear that far more than any physical thing. And this is why theological warriors are so potent, because they fear their God. They fear the disappointment of their God more than they fear whatever earthly thing happens. Whatever arbitrary thing you're doing, whatever important thing that you think is important, and you're looking to develop the courage for it, find something that scares you more than the thing itself. Being complacent, being lazy, breaking your character, offending a God, offending a spouse, offending a child, like whatever thing that you're mechanistically set up to worry about and prioritize, find that priority. And that's how you kind of cattle prod your way into taking that next step. That's how you develop courage. And a lot of guys through ego will talk about, well, I ain't afraid of nothing. You're a bullshit liar. Bullshit liar, because humans are anthropologically wired to be afraid. That doesn't mean you're a coward if you use it appropriately. But if you haven't mechanized it, if you haven't made it utilitarian for you, then yeah, you're a coward. And the guys that say they're not afraid of anything, generally speaking, they're the most afraid of everybody. And they're generally the ones that will get loud, get violent, get aggressive over stupid shit. They're the guys at a fast food restaurant chucking their fucking sodas across the fucking counter because they got it wrong. Because they're afraid of everything. And it sours everything they're about. They have never sat and thought, what is more scary than this moment right here? They've never been put into a position where they had to make that choice. Now, you don't have to be put into a position to make that choice, right? You don't have to get into an altercation. You don't have to get into a violent situation. You don't have to have your back against the wall. You don't have to be broke and worry about the lights getting shut off. I'll tell you right now that those things are very fast adopters. With those experiences, you can access that shit a lot faster. I can promise you that. Being a mother or a father will give you access to a different kind of courage than you ever thought possible, because you have to. They're quick catalysts. They are fast firing things that will get you to that level faster. They're incubators. However, you don't actually need them if you can synthesize it, if you can thought process it, if you can mentally say, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of getting punched in the mouth. Well, if I'm afraid of getting punched in the mouth, I should probably go get punched in the mouth. Well, I don't want to get punched in the mouth in case I end up in the hospital. Then you go to a gym to get punched in the mouth. You wear pads and a fucking mouth guard. You get punched in the mouth enough times there, you're not going to worry about it anymore. Because two things are going to happen. One, you're going to realize you don't have a glass jaw and you're not fragile. And two, you're going to learn the skills to not get punched in the fucking mouth. You'll learn how to bob and weave and you'll know how to counter-strike. Like, that's the mechanism we should approach all life with. I'm afraid of starting a business. Then go start a business. And get punched in the mouth in a business. And over time, you'll realize it's not that bad. You'll figure it out. You can synthetically manufacture your back against the wall without having the natural consequence of having. And parents know this all too well. What do you think fucking parents do for their kids? Natural consequences, you don't fucking follow my rules, you end up dead or starving or not having a place to stay. Like, these are natural consequences that parents synthesize and manufacture so that the kids understand, like, I'm the only thing keeping you from the wolves. And every once in a while, you have to remind them, I'm the only thing keeping you from the wolves. You synthesize that for them so that the natural consequence of them actually finding the teeth of the wolf are not the actual consequence. The consequence is they find you. They find having to clean the room, losing a privilege, losing this or whatever, right? You're synthesizing natural consequence. You can do that in your own life. And I think too many people think that they're disempowered from doing that in their own life. And so then they get gripped with fear and they panic and then they do nothing. Because now they're afraid of everything. There is no scale. There's just fear. Right? And if you want an example of that, look at somebody who's a combat veteran versus somebody who's a non-combat veteran versus somebody who's never been in the military. The things that scare a combat veteran are a lot shorter list than the guy who was a non-combat veteran, but the non-combat veteran's fear list is a lot shorter than the civilian who's never experienced anything. And even going below that, the civilian that's had trauma and struggle and strife, their fear list is shorter than the person who's had a sheltered bubble wrapped life who's entitled to everything. Because what they have is they have experience to start scaling out what things actually matter to be afraid of. I'll tell you a story. When I first got in the military, I joined an entry-level job with IT. The amount of times that I heard civilian, non-combat experience, non-strife written people tell me that getting a printer to print was life and death. Their words, life and death. I lost count. But as a person who has experienced life and death, I had no respect for that request. And it actually pissed me off. It frustrated me. You need me to drop everything I'm doing to prioritize a print job? Meanwhile, I'm dealing with all this other stuff over here for other people who actually have things that I need to fix, that are actual life and death, that are actually problematic. That is the greatest example of people without a fear mechanism. When your fight or flight is engaged by a printer, you lack parameters. You have not developed a scale. And that's what we see in society. We are decadent and we are luxurious. And many people have never experienced true oppression. Many people have never experienced true failure. Many people have never experienced true strife. And as a result, things that if you had experienced those things would not be big deals are now being blown out of proportion. Including, I want to start a business, but I'm afraid of failure. That, to me, as a person, I failed many businesses because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was ignorant. That's how I learned. And you got faster at it, you got smoother at it, you got more awareness to it, and then you become more risk averse to where you're like, well, I know I'll be all right, so I can take this leap. So what I would leave you guys with, and I'm going to keep this to this shortness because I was super late. What I'd leave you with is try to identify how you're calibrating your fear. How are you scaling your fear? And if you don't have the knowledge, experience, and wisdom to scale that, then how are you going to step into that and start synthesizing that scale system? For some people, jumping out of a plane is extremely terrifying until they do it. But once they do it, they now have a new upper limit of fear. They have a new upper limit of scale. So start synthesizing those things. If your biggest fear is violence, go place yourself in a system where it's a safe violence, like a UFC gym or an MMA or jiu-jitsu, or, you know, if your biggest fear is guns, then go pick up a gun, go take classes. You can inoculate yourself from these fears so that you're not frozen from it. And the more you do it, one, the more people will see you and say, you're so courageous. Like really courageous, because they in their mind have not created that scale, and they will see it and feel fear just in the idea of you doing it, which will also help you double down with continuing down that path of developing the courage. And two, start looking at your life and saying, what things would I regret on my deathbed if I let fear stop me from those things? And if you have those conversations with yourself, I can guarantee you're going to start approaching things very, very differently. You're going to find yourself making decisions based on, well, I don't want that because I'm more afraid of that than this right here in this moment. And start creating your own paradigm. And not everybody's is going to be different. Some people are more risk averse. Some people are less risk averse. Some people have more fear. Like I said in my earlier example, combat veteran versus a civilian, those are vastly different structures of fear because they have vastly different experiences. They know anecdotally how soft or, you know, how fragile they are, or how, you know, stubborn they can be, or how much their mindset can be improved by just not quitting. Right? Like, I can't tell you how many times people tell me they're surprised that I can just throw a backpack on and walk 11 miles. I can never do that. Well, if you do it and you just don't stop till it's done, then you can do it. That's a mindset thing. And I know I can do that because when I was in the military, they'd throw a pack on us that was twice as heavy for twice as long, and we'd hike 26 miles. So doing 11 miles with half the weight, I don't care how out of shape I am. That's an easy walk for me. That's just a stretch of the legs. Because I've got a different thing to measure it against. Start putting yourself in those positions to measure it against something new. And it's hard at first, and it's scary at first, and it's very uncomfortable. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more comfortable you get with doing it. And eventually, much like working out, where you fear the pain of working out when you first start, and then once you've been at it a while, you miss getting sore. The same thing's going to happen when you challenge yourself with experiences. You're going to start to miss being uncomfortable. You're going to start to miss being anxious or apprehensive about a new thing because you're like, maybe I'm not challenging myself anymore. But that's a good place to be. And that's a functional place to be. So I'll leave it at that. Sorry, it's late, guys. It was a long day already.
It's only noon.
Don't remind me.
You get to do this. You get to have a busy day, right?
I do.
You know,
I definitely do. And this I've been looking forward to. So again, it was easy to get to this point because I had this. It's like, I just got to get to that point. It's fine.
There you go.
And this will reinvigorate me for the rest of the day.
Yeah, no, it's really good. The piece of you know, the prepping yourself for desensitizing to whatever that fear is. It comes in lots of big ways. And so, you know, from my perspective, taking it, I had a client in front of me recently, and they were like dealing with divorce and some issues and things. And they're like, you know what, I made the drive here to come see you. And that was a big thing. Like, I don't drive this far, you know, and it resonated with me in a time in my life where I did the same thing. I commuted over a mountain pass, and I was like, that was huge, you know. And then now it's like, I'm a road trip warrior. Like, please get out of my way. I got 4 mountains in front of me. But just balancing it out, like you can desensitize yourself in little ways, or you can put, you know, an 80-pound pack on yourself and walk for 11 miles. But for some people, that same correlation is just simply like, you know, I went somewhere that I've always been afraid to go. I drove the car because I wasn't allowed to before, or, you know, whatever. So, but really good to that piece of desensitizing in little bits and get yourself stronger in that little place. Then you can do a little more, then you can do a little more. And to that correlation, gym is a good way of doing that. You know, I didn't think I could do that. Well, I went to the gym and I put 5 more pounds on the bar and I did it. And that is the same mental mindset that it takes to be like, well, I don't think I can walk 11 miles. Okay, well then walk 10 or walk 1 and see how it goes. And
Just
then the
get
next
around the
time,
block.
yeah, you know, so it can seem like a huge concept of like, oh, well, it's easy to be like, just desensitize yourself to the fear. Take little steps, little
Yeah.
pieces, and you'll eventually end up at that big place. So good conversation.
Yeah, only cut the pie into 4 pieces because I can't eat 8.
Exactly.
That's it. I mean, and that's the thing. Like when that's a good point on both sides of that, right? Like I talk at these larger concepts because that's where my life is. I've been blessed enough to have these experiences that have given me these wildly unnatural for a lot of people experiences where I'm like, yeah, that's not a big deal. Like we were at a gas station the other day and this guy was screaming and freaking out and everybody's like staring and stuff. And I'm just going about my business and they're like, don't you see this? And I'm like, yeah, but he ain't going to do nothing. He's just upset. You know, or he's high, or he's doing the heroin dance, you know, like that I grew up around drug addicts. So like, I know what's going on over there. So I'm not engaged with that. I'm aware of it, but I'm not engaged with it because I know what that's like. I'm not all like, this is so crazy. This has never happened before.
Right.
And that's what that inoculation is. But to each person, to your point, Tish, like it's going to be small, right? Some people, the scary thing is, I don't even know if I can get off the couch every day to go on a walk around the block.
Right.
Some people, I don't know if I can get off social media. I don't know if I can limit the amount of times I scroll in a day of social media. What if I miss something?
Right.
Well, you won't know till you miss it. So I can get off of it.
You will have missed it and you won't know.
Yeah. And Another example, my ex-wife, FOMO is a big problem for people that don't inoculate themselves in fear because they constantly feel like they missed something. And so we bought a house a couple of years before our divorce, and I was doing the checklist, which is what kind of led to the divorce in the first place. But we buy this house, it was like $400,000. We financed it, whatever. We're in this house for maybe a week. She's still looking at houses on the market. We've already gone through escrow, signed all the paperwork, money's changed hands. We're living in this house. She's still looking at things on the market. She comes to me, she's like, man, we could have got this house, we could have got that house, we had it. I'm like, why are you doing that? She's like, what do you mean? I just want to know that we got the best deal. I was like, we got the best deal because that's what we bought. Now you're just punishing yourself for making a decision. You don't need to do that. When you make the decision, own the decision and stay there in that decision. Don't make the decision and then recant and be like, oh, this, I don't, maybe I didn't make the right decision. Like, no, stick with the decision, see it through, then make your calls, measure it on the outcome, not on the process. And, to your point, Tish, like some people's process is going to be very small. Like I said, getting off the couch, or maybe their process is just cutting out soda, one thing, right? Like maybe they have a 2-liter bottle of soda every day. I'm speaking from experience on that. I grew up drinking soda every day. I was addicted to soda, like to the point of like, if I was drinking something, it wasn't water, it wasn't coffee, it wasn't an energy drink, it was soda. It was Pepsi, it was Coke, it was Dr. Pepper. It was disgusting stuff that now I can't even stand the flavor of 99% of the time. But it took me almost a year to kick that habit. And the first time I did it, right out the gate, I was like, no more soda. And I was like, I'm never buying a soda again. That never works. It never works. You will eventually like feel restricted and then you go backwards, right? So what I did instead to get me off of soda was I was like, all right, well, I'll buy the soda, but now it's my choice. I'm not restricted. It's now a choice. So now I'm going to choose to only have a glass a day, 8 ounces a day. And over time, I just stopped remembering to buy soda. I stopped remembering to drink soda. And in the moment, if I look back, that moment was completely impossible to me when I started. The idea that I would just forget to drink soda when I was just like constantly habitually drinking soda, it was impossible. It was unfathomable. It couldn't be in the realm of possibilities. But once I did these microtransactions over time, you start to realize like, yeah, it's not that hard. Right? Like it was hard in the beginning, but now that I'm doing it, it takes a little bit less time, a little bit less effort. And then eventually it's just like, well, I can have it or I don't have it and it's fine. Right. And that I should caveat that's a little bit different when it comes to chemical dependencies like heroin or, cocaine or drugs and alcohol. Like there are chemical dependencies where your body will actually fight you on it. But still same principle, right? Methadone clinics are all about weaning people off slowly but surely, right? Like it's just, you got to find your increment, whatever your risk acceptance level is, right? What can you stick to for a little bit of time and then move it up a notch or make it less or more or whatever. But eventually, if you just stay on that path and you just don't stop taking that step, you will hit whatever goal you want. You just got to keep going and not quit. Anything else before we call it?
No, good call. Good on
Good
timing.
call.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I had to juggle that because my phone said it was at one time and my computer said it was at another. I'm like, the damn things aren't synced. I don't get it, but sorry, I was late.
Daylight savings.
Who's wrong?
Something.
Yeah.
One of them, I think, I don't know.
Stupid Arizona people.
I blame
Yeah.
Skynet.
Skynet.
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Great.
Take care.
Goodbye.